Okay, now I think I'm live, and we're trying something different, and I'm gonna bring Tim in now because I see his face down there, so it means it's working. I switched over to StreamYard, which is a studio streaming platform, because I couldn't figure out how to do Facebook, even though I've been using Facebook since 2006. So that is pretty much that. So I'm gonna bring Tim into the stream. Tim, you can see me?
I can see you. I can hear you.
All right, awesome, sweet. All right, so now we have people joining us, few people. So I'm sorry about that. We're about 15 minutes late, but better late than never, I
Hey,
guess.
that's okay.
um, so before we get started, I just want to say thanks so much, Tim, for hanging out with me tonight. Um, this is the first conversation that I'm having with people who I'm calling bold creatives. I created um, this group called Bold Creatives Collective just like a few weeks ago, and we already have like over 200 people in the group, which I think is pretty cool. And it is an opportunity for me to interact with artists of all different types, whether they're visual artists, performing artists, writers, um, crafters, people who find that they are innately creative and need to put stuff out in the world. And I created a new coaching business, separate from my private practice, to really work with artists and creators to get over their shit so that they can um, uh, so so that they can enjoy the process of creating and ultimately make better stuff. And so this is what I'm starting to do. And I created this group, and I thought, hey, wouldn't it be awesome to bring some artists in to talk about their creative process, where they've been, maybe even tap onto like what this past year has been like for them, as far as their creativity. I know that some people's creativity has kind of blossomed over the past year of this chaos that we've been living in. Other people have had more trouble being creative when all of this has been going on. Um, so, so that's kind of what I've been thinking about. And you're the first person that said, "Yeah, I'll come on and chat." So thank you so much for
Yeah.
doing this.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Um, yeah. So, Tim, can you give us really a little bit of an idea of who you are, what makes you a bold creative, since I'm telling you about this name that I'm throwing around here, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I'm a painter and from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I've been living here and working here for well, I've been living here my whole life, and obviously still live here and everything. And I've been painting probably since high school. Actually, not probably. I have been painting since high school, almost pretty much straight through, or making other work as well. Um, and let's see, I currently have my studio. I'm in my studio right now,
Sweet.
and I currently actually my studio is in my apartment, like so many people.
Right.
And yeah, it's just the last year has been really, as everybody knows, it's been really insane on a number of levels. For myself, it has meant that my practice has grown, um,
Okay.
despite everything else that has been going on. And so, yeah, it's been really good. It's been challenging at times,
Yeah.
but really good.
So when you say your practice has grown over the past year, what does that mean? What is growth in the sense that you're talking about it being?
Yeah. So for me, basically, long story short, I was able to leave my day job that I'd had last year in July. So it basically came down to a decision that I had to make about whether to take advantage of these art projects that had come up for me that had started in 2019 and were
Okay.
continuing through last year, although a couple of them in altered form. And it was just like the proverbial when it rains, it pours, So all these things were happening.
Right.
Lockdown happened. I was in the
Right.
studio, and then we went back to work. Um, and I just saw that I wasn't going to have the time because we had a reduced workforce where I was, and it just wasn't going to be enough time for me to be able to pursue the art project. So
Right.
I had some money left over from unemployment, and I had a couple sales, thankfully.
Yeah.
So I took the leap, and
That's awesome.
yeah,
It's like a leap of faith, right? But
yeah,
it
it's
was
usually
something
the case.
you were kind of coming up against that decision anyway. Like, if I wanna
Mhm.
be able to do these projects, if I wanna be able to really, make and pursue my passion, my life's work, I
Right.
need to make this change, right? Because I need the time. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you did it, and what has it been like since July? Like, I see your stuff, like, you're posting stuff all the time, you're showing all different kinds of work that you've been working on.
Mhm.
What has been happening since July?
Well, so yeah, since July, so last year I was involved in a few projects. I was involved in a group show at Towson University. I did a print project here that was funded by the Brandywine Workshop. And we started the process last year of me doing a mural with Mural Arts.
Sweet.
That has since continued into this year because we hit some snafus with a couple of walls that we were supposed to get but weren't able to get. So we landed on one. So hopefully by the end of this month, beginning of May, I'll start work on it.
That's really awesome. And
Yeah.
for those of you who are either watching right now, and because of the platform, I can't see who exactly is watching. There's a few of you, but anyone who watches this afterwards, Mural Arts, if you're not from Philadelphia, Mural Arts is one of our premier public arts organizations in the city. And Philadelphia is, or one of the reasons why Philadelphia is the best city in the world is because we have such a robust public arts program. One of those components to that public arts program is mural arts. We have a huge mural arts program, and so that's what Tim is talking about. And it's really cool to hear that you have an opportunity to work with mural arts. Hopefully, that will be an awesome project once that gets going there.
Yeah, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It'll be my first public mural project.
Yeah, that's so sweet.
So a little bit of a learning curve, but it's all good.
Hey, yeah, I mean, it's like pushing, right? I
Right,
mean, I think
right.
that is like something that, excuse me, some people in the group have talked about wanting to like talk more about is
Mhm,
like pushing yourself in your creative practice, right?
mhm,
So like we start out and we identify, something that we're maybe is kind of like, oh, this is our language of art, right? This is how we
right.
make, whether that's like we're a painter or we're a woodworker or we're a musician or a vocalist, right? We kind of find our creative or artistic voice somewhere, but then like we want to like push into that and grow from that.
Mhm,
And I guess you're saying that this will be your first public mural project, and it's like a learning experience or a growth experience. What has your experience over the years, because you've been doing this for a long time, making work?
mhm,
Um, what has your experience been like as far as pushing yourself and um, getting yourself to grow beyond just drawing or painting in the
mhm.
way you were doing it, you know, early 2000s, 90s, and
Right.
earlier?
Yeah, basically my studio, my one of my mottos is be willing to rip it up, tear it apart, and put it back together as something new.
Yeah.
And I wrote that on a sign and I did that in 1999 in the studio that I had up on 3rd Street in Old City here in
Yep.
Philadelphia. And that's pretty much um, one of my cues for myself to not let anything get precious.
I
And
like
I've always been kind of adventurous in my work. And another thing that I say to myself that's an ongoing dialogue is what if and why not? Or
what if and why not?
what if and let's see what happens.
Oh, yeah. let's
You
see what
know?
happens. And I like that idea. Like you had you stringing a bunch of ideas around there of like, not holding on to things too preciously,
Right.
being willing to, like you said, rip it apart. Uh,
Mhm.
and that's really, I think, a key component to ability to grow, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have to be willing to, um, to let things go. So, I can be painting, and this happens all the time. I mean, I'm looking at a couple of things that I have in the studio now, and my work is multi-layered, and often, you can see. You can just actually kind of like look back in time in a way, kind of time travel, because you can see some of the earlier things that I did that interact with the newer levels. Um, but I can make a mark, or I can make a few marks, or a couple passages, or
Right.
something, and really love them. But I also realize, I have to look at that and say, well, this isn't the painting. You know what I mean? This isn't the final step in this journey
Yeah.
for this work. So if I have to have to cover it up, it gets covered up. That's it. You know what I mean? I'm not going to worry about it. I mean, I knew I did it. It's there. I may have, if it's something I had to learn from, I learned from it. But
Right.
you learn from it, you let it go.
Learn from it and let it go. Yeah, that is a really, I mean, and when you look at your when I look at your paintings, and I think um in your bio, right, you talk about how process is important to you.
Hmm.
And then you were just talking about like covering things up, right?
Hmm.
When I look at your work, I just see the layers, right? And like at least from my perspective, and I could be totally wrong, right? And just like throwing something out there, and you're gonna be like, no, this kid doesn't know what he's talking about. Um,
That's okay.
I just see the history of the painting and of the process there,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like,
you're right. Yeah,
right,
yeah,
and
yeah.
being willing to work over top of stuff.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And that's just it, like, um one of the things that has really influenced the work that I do now, that I've been doing for the last probably like 6 years at this point, with what I call glyphs, those figures that I make, is what I see in the streets, graffiti and everything, and what I like to call the anonymous art making that goes on. All these histories are built up on a surface. So, yeah, someone will throw up a tag, someone will throw up a poster, someone will tag over there, someone will buff over that. And you sort of like see the outlines, what I mean? Someone comes along, starts ripping maybe some of the paper down or something. And so you see all these people's marks intermingling and at different levels. But you don't know the whole story.
Yeah.
So there's this mystery there that happens.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of like what happens in my work. A lot of my work, you'll see, like, you see hints of things, you'll see things covering other things,
Mhm. Mhm.
and you will never really quite know everything that's going on. It's almost like catching a moment. Um, it's almost like a moment is happening, and if you blink, it might like change all of a sudden. That's something
Yeah.
I'm sort of after in some of my work.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to catch it right when you see it,
Right.
right? And record it and not let
Right.
it get away from you.
Yeah, and that's something else that I do too. I take a lot of photographs when I'm walking around.
Okay.
This ongoing series that I have called Daily Observations, and in these, I take photographs of like all sorts of things, like how basically it's about how human beings interact with the built environment around us. So there's all sorts of things going. There's old clothes around. There's like someone has boarded up a window, and maybe there's some tape. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
there are these interesting little like incidents that happen that
Yeah.
that I capture in these photographs, and some of that informs my work. The photographs, not often, but I look at them as their own thing. But sometimes I do, when I'm working on something and I might be stuck. I'll go to I'll open up
Your
my photo
archive.
library,
Yeah, the library.
go through.
Yeah. I mean, that's really important too. I think, some people just think, okay, so I'm a painter and I'm just going to paint
Hmm.
and that's my process. I just paint, right?
Right.
But the process is so much bigger than
Oh yeah,
us
yeah.
painting, right? Like you're talking about like walking through Old City, right?
Mhm.
Or walking through some other other part of town or whatever, and just
Right.
picking up little pieces of life or little
Mhm.
moments, right?
Right.
Taking a picture here, taking a picture there, that
Right.
might not immediately end up in a final work that you're
Right.
going to exhibit, but it imprints itself in your memory,
Mhm.
right? On your heart. It goes into your photo library, right? That you can pull up and reference later. That's all part of the process there,
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
right?
Yeah. So yeah, and there's all sorts of things that influence what I do. There's music, there's design, there's architecture. There's all sorts of things. So
Yeah.
um, yeah.
I think people think that if I'm not always creating or doing the art that I'm known for or that I like to do,
Mhm.
then I'm being lazy or I'm not actually being productive.
Right, right.
Can you talk a little bit about like periods of time when you're not, because you're not always painting, right?
Right.
You're
Oh
not
no, no,
always drawing,
definitely not.
right?
Yeah.
But how can the times that you're not painting, not drawing, not photographing be
Mhm.
part of your creative process?
So once in a while, and I do this fairly often. It's good to. I found that it's good to refresh your mind, refresh your eye, and like you said, you can't be on 24/7. What I mean, with what you do,
Right.
otherwise you just burn out. And so some of the things that I do, like I do hit moments where periods where like I don't know what I want to do. Sometimes I'll have a date I don't feel like working in the studio, but I'll come anyway. And I don't know, maybe I'll prep another surface, maybe I'll
Right.
clean up, you
Right.
know. Maybe I'll just sit down and watch some videos. A lot of times, one of the things that I'll do is I'll like watch art videos. I'll watch interviews with different artists or whatever while I'm maybe prepping a surface or something. A few weeks back, I did it. I had a day where I did like maybe like 20 drawings in one day while I was watching art interviews. I was
Okay.
just standing there and had a computer on. But yeah, it's definitely necessary. And other times, I'll read, I'll do other things.
Yep.
And So it's definitely important to not hold yourself, not feel like you have to do this thing, because a lot of times when you try to force yourself to do something like that, you'll wind up blocking yourself.
Blocking yourself.
You'll
Yeah.
cut off pathways of creativity when you like sort of like force yourself into something. Now,
Right.
sometimes there are moments when like forcing yourself is important to do,
Yep.
but you have to figure it out for yourself. But sometimes it can be very counterintuitive as well.
Yeah. I think this is like a really
Or
important
counterproductive. I'm sorry, not counter.
counterproductive. Yeah. Like this idea of just not forcing it, not forcing something
Right.
out of you. I like the idea of like forcing yourself to the studio or
Hmm.
forcing yourself to wherever it is you make.
Right.
Um, and whether you actually make something there that day or
Right.
not, right?
Yeah,
That's
it's all a part of showing up.
showing up.
Yeah, so you don't, you can show up any number of ways. Sometimes I might just show up and just like stare at something I'm working on. I might be at a point where a painting, I'm slowing down in the process and things are getting close to a final like resolution for them or a stopping point. And sometimes I just have to stare at it for, a few minutes or, 15 minutes, something like that. And then maybe I'll do something else and come back to it. And then maybe I'll go out and have to get some groceries or something. So I just try to like take it easy and not, try to, I feel like because all that is going on, and even if you're not working, like
Yeah.
when I was at a day job, over the years I've had this different jobs, and when I was at work and couldn't get to the studio, um, I was still thinking about what I was doing, and a lot of times those hours away from the studio and just thinking, or whatever, made the process easier when I went back in the studio again. When I had that time,
Yeah.
because I had a slightly clearer idea of what it is I might want to do, and then things might still change, but in my head, I've worked through a bunch of iterations of whatever it is I'm working on.
Right. So it's not just the process of putting something out on a surface or on a piece of paper or even on a stage if you're a performer, right?
Right.
That is the art. The creativity, the creative process is about what's happening throughout your entire body and
Yeah, yeah, your entire body in life. I mean, it's art is life, and everything, almost everything that you do influences what you do. In the studio, or whether you're a dancer, you're a writer. You bring all that stuff with you, and you filter out, what you feel like you don't need for your particular project.
yeah,
And you keep those things that you feel are important, and just go from there.
for sure. So you have spent some time as like a visiting artist, a guest lecturer. So you've
Mhm.
worked with students of
Mhm.
the arts through, and you said in your bio that you've worked with elementary school students,
Yeah.
you've worked with university students. Um, I guess, what do you see different between, or can you identify any differences between an elementary school student and their creativity and how they show up to the creative process to someone who is supposedly, super creative because they've
Mhm.
made it to art school or an art program and their
Right.
creative process? Do you see any differences, and can one maybe learn from the other?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's interesting because this week I'm doing like a guest lecture at an elementary school in Arlington, Virginia, and I'm
Okay.
talking to third graders this week.
Okay.
Um, so that's really was cool. That's really cool. So children, from what I've seen, they're like whatever. You know what I mean? Kid,
Right.
this one little girl, I mean, she showed us this flower that she made, and it was like something she pasted together, and they just go for it. You know what I mean? They just like,
Yeah.
whatever. And a lot of times, with older people, as we get older, especially if you're in a program, there's certain ways of being that you sort of adapt. And for some people, not everybody, but for some people, um, some of that is like channeled in a different direction. Some of that like childish, or I don't use childish, but childlike,
Childlike,
yeah,
yeah.
childlike, approach to what you're doing is very is channeled off in a different direction. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, we, there's a whole different set of guidelines that you take on as you get older, as a creative person,
Right.
and some of that you wind up filtering out some of the stuff that um, you had as a kid, and other times not. You know what I mean? Because a lot of us still retain that childlike wonder of creation, of wondering, like, again, like I say, like, what happens if I do this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I go and do it, and it's
What
like, oh,
happens if I do this?
well,
Yeah.
okay, that didn't work.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think in a lot of ways it's still there. But watching kids, man, when they're like, I had a kid, like there was one kid today, who was in, or yesterday morning. Um, so we were, I gave a presentation, then we had questions, and during the whole period, they, at the end of it, they had this drawing that they did that was like inspired by something that I had just shown them. So they just like went in on it,
That's
it was just
awesome.
really fun.
Yeah. They just went right in. I
Yeah.
mean, I think, my I have a 2 and a, well, he's over 2 and a half now. He's almost 3.
Hmm.
And I just watch my son, and I just watch him. He has, like, no fear. He just, like,
Hmm.
goes for it. He doesn't care if he, like, falls or
Right.
fails or, like, you know, he just goes all in, and that is, like,
Yeah.
such a beautiful experience. And, like, I just remember, or when I work with students now who are older, who are, in university art programs or something like that, there's sometimes the work just is so like restrained and
Mhm.
like kind of like contained. And I understand we're teaching different principles, right? And
Right,
different structures and stuff. And some of that is really important.
right,
But also there seems to sometimes be a hesitation to go back to this. I don't really care. This is my
right,
expression. This is my life coming out
right,
of me onto this surface, onto this plane,
right.
whatever that is. And I'm just when I catch glimpses of it, you know, and I see that in your work,
Mhm,
um, it's just they're really beautiful moments, and it really feels like humanity.
mhm.
Um, where sometimes when we kind of channel some of our creative energy off into other endeavors, it's hard to access some of that when we might otherwise want to.
Right, right.
Just right?
Yeah, yeah, you become an adult, and different sort of things come into play in terms of what you have to do with your life and whatnot. So, yeah, it's not it's not it's something that just happens, and then again, um, so there's all sorts of things that come into play there. But I think that as long as you remain open to the possibility of of play and discovery, you know,
Mhm.
then then I think you'll be fine.
Yeah. Remain open, don't hold too tightly to things, be willing
Yeah,
to
yeah.
tear it up, right, throw it away. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
nothing is too precious.
right.
You know, some people, you know, over the past few weeks, I've been hanging out with folks in the group and seeing what they've been just commenting on and
Hmm.
things like that. You know, some of them are, you know, professional creatives. They're artists. They're musicians. They're doing this day in and day out. Others of them have been that in the past and aren't that right now. Other
Right,
people have um, always been creative and have always been making, but for one reason or another that has been back put on the back burner over
right.
the like recent past or whatever. And there's a lot of like hesitancy to get back into making. They're afraid, like, you know, do I have anything to do I actually have anything to say?
Hmm.
Am I good enough? What will people think if I all of the sudden start making and putting stuff out there? Are they going to see me as an artist or a maker?
Right.
Um, and I guess I'm wanting to talk a little bit about imposter syndrome,
Hmm.
right? And I know when we were emailing back and forth earlier today, you said that you have an idea about how to handle or deal with imposter syndrome. So I guess can you
Um,
talk about imposter syndrome, you know, in your experience, and then a little bit about what you were mentioning to me about that?
yeah, sure. It's kind of funny. So um, my the anecdote that I was referring to had to do with my own situation of imposter syndrome that I encountered, or my feeling about it anyway. And this had to do with the fact that back in the school year of 2017 into 2018, I was teaching at Tyler School of Art. I was teaching an advanced painting course there as an adjunct, and my imposter syndrome was came from the fact that I had not really been in the academic world,
Okay.
as a teacher previously.
Right.
I had mentored students, and I had, done, visiting artist situations, with students, but I had never taught on a really formal level. So I was very hesitant about, going into this, and I was like very, very honored to, have, to be able to do what I
Yeah.
did. You know what I mean? Because that's a pretty big thing,
Yeah.
advanced painting. Um, at a
Right.
school like Tyler too,
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, so that's what I was dealing with, like, as I went along.
Mhm.
but the thing that I was reminded of was the fact that I have had all of this experience in my life as an artist, up until that point. And, I was able to bring that experience with me.
Right.
So once I got started, once I got into it a little bit, it took me like a few weeks actually, to sort of like really get over my feelings about it.
Yeah, get your sea legs, right?
Okay, what's that?
Get your sea legs.
Yeah,
Start
yeah,
feeling a little
exactly.
confident. Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly, because I mean, there were people in the department who are artists and who were like, they have been doing this, like they can toss it off at the drop of a hat,
Right.
and
Right.
here I was feeling like, but it worked out well. It worked out well. I think the students got a lot out of the way I approached the courses, and I learned a lot myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's imposter. And when it comes to people doing art and feeling that they maybe they don't have what they think they should have, um there's there's really, you have to like do what feels comfortable to you. And if you want to do something, then my feeling is go ahead and do it. You know what I mean? You have to start somewhere.
Yes.
I mean, and starting is the whole thing. So, and it doesn't matter where you start. It
Mhm.
really doesn't. You know what I mean? And like, I think the biggest thing is that people think people are going to judge them, for what they're doing, and where they are as a
Right.
creative person. And they don't see themselves as a creative, or they don't see themselves as the type of creative person that they want to be,
Right.
perhaps.
Right.
I think that's a big issue.
Mhm.
Um,
They're
but
too far ahead of themselves, right? Right? They're
yeah,
not. I think we should really work towards celebrating where we are now
yeah,
today.
yeah.
And
And it's,
like,
if what you can do is make like, a small, like, drawing on your kitchen table, then hey, do it.
yeah.
It doesn't matter, size doesn't matter. All that matters is, how do you feel? How does it make you feel to create? How does it make you feel to do this thing? I mean, that's what got me into painting in the first place, was just the alchemy of taking these materials, minerals and whatnot that are in a liquid form or
Yeah.
semi-liquid form,
Yeah.
putting them on a surface and making a whole other like universe out
Yeah.
of those things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I mean, that's just like that's so beautiful. Like, pushing paint around and like just like using the materials, feeling it, uh,
mhm.
feeling yourself kind of moving things around on a surface. But that's what it's all about for me. It's not necessarily about how many people like it, or how many
Right,
people want it.
right,
And I've had to really work really hard myself to kind of get to that place. Uh,
yeah,
and I'm doing a thing right now, to try and build this part of my business. And it's really scary. Like, I'm doing a bunch of things that I don't really know what I'm
yeah,
doing. I couldn't operate Facebook, and I'm like the most obnoxious Facebook user of all time, and I couldn't figure it out tonight, right? And the person who I'm working with, or some of the people that I'm working with, are like, like, when we're afraid of doing stuff, it's not about being perfect right away. It's about putting it out there, putting stuff out there, and then making adjustments. And if you're
right,
scared of what people are thinking of you, and what they're going to think of, oh, you're doing this, really? Well, like,
yeah, yeah,
it's not everybody thinking that.
right.
They were telling me, telling the group that I'm in, it is really, if you drill down to it, like, maybe one or two people in your life that you're thinking of, really. And do
Mhm.
those people actually matter? At
Right,
the
right.
end of the
Yeah,
day?
yeah. And I've had to, deal with that in my own life. I think all of us have to do whenever we learn something new or we're trying to do something new. There's always that hesitancy. There's always that, like, you're not sure where to start, and yeah, and I deal with that all the time, and it's just, taking it like just a little bit at a time, try to break it down into its components if you can. And that's something that I struggle with sometimes, because I'm looking at this big thing and trying to like move that down into like manageable bits. It doesn't
Mhm.
come natural to me. My first reaction is like, this is big thing. And
Big, yeah.
and so then I try to like, or I have to be told that like, hey, hold up, why don't you try this first and then do that? And like, oh,
Mm.
okay, cool. Yeah. All right. I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, I mean, you just mentioned I have to be told, "Why don't you try this sometimes," right? And so that brings me to a question. So, like, you're an artist now, you've been doing this for a really long time, you graduated from Temple in, like, '94,
Mhm.
right? Like, this isn't like, making paintings today is not your first time to the rodeo, and you've gotten representation, by, Bridget and, some people in LA and everything
Mhm.
like that, right? Like, are these people telling you how you need to be creating or what you need to be creating? Are they helping guide you? Where do you go for feedback, right? As someone who has representation, who
Mhm.
has goals to meet, because this is his business too.
I go to other artists. You know what I mean? I look at, I mean, as far as the creative side, yeah, I go and look at, other artists all the time. I'm always looking and, seeing what other people are doing to like solve or have done to solve, different, visual, in my case, visual problems, on
Right.
canvas or paper or whatever. Sometimes it's other people in my life, like my girlfriend.
Okay.
um, you know, um, she's tries to like, I mean, not tries, but I mean, um, she'll like sort of ground me,
Okay.
sort of bring me back down to earth, when I'm feeling sort of like, overwhelmed by whatever I'm facing, what I mean?
Yeah.
So, she's a big help in that way.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so yeah, that's basically, sometimes it's just other people in your life,
Right.
that
Hey, slow down, right? You need
right, exactly, yeah,
breath.
it's great to have that,
Yeah, we really need
because you get wrapped up into your own head. I'm in my head a lot, and
Mhm.
um, I grew up as an only child, so growing up as an only child, I like had to make my own, not having any brothers or sisters around me. I had friends, but a lot of times you're by yourself in the house, wintertime or whatever. So I was like definitely like making up my own sort of like universes, and staying in my head a lot. And so that's something that um, I've still carried with me into adulthood.
Right.
And sometimes it gets in, I get in my own way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I have,
and you need somebody to kinda, like, pull you out of there, right? Bring you
yeah,
back.
yeah. And I've learned, like different ways myself of dealing with that too. I've learned to like, slow myself down and try to like say, okay, wait a minute, where is this feeling coming from? If I'm feeling stressed all of a sudden about something, what is that stress about, as opposed
Right,
to,
right.
you know, letting it take over.
Letting it take over, right.
Yeah.
I
I
think
try not to let it take it. Sometimes
well,
we'll talk.
sometimes it does, right? For
Yeah.
sure, but I think that is something that sometimes we're just like these, I talk to people that I work with all the time about how, we tend to be like little disembodied heads, right?
Mhm.
Like, we're just, like, floating around, we're in our own head, we're just, like,
Right.
reacting to things. We lose touch of our body, we lose touch of our, like, spiritual center,
Mhm.
the environment around us, and we're just in our head, and it can become really overwhelming, uh,
Mhm.
when we're just in our head. And
Right.
like you said, stopping, getting to the place, or getting enough practice to stop yourself and say, "Wait a second. What the hell is going on right now?
Right.
What am I actually feeling? What am I responding to?
Right.
Uh, and is my impulse to do X, Y, and Z actually, you know, needed or appropriate? And if so, awesome. But if not, like, how can I respond differently? What can I do to help myself?"
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it takes practice too, you know what I mean? This is something that like doesn't
Mhm.
just, it doesn't just happen, and
It
and
does.
but yeah, so that's yeah, I think that's really important. If you can get a hold of that, like try to be in the moment. It's a cliche, but I mean, it's thought of as a cliche, but being in the moment, like that really can help a lot, and whatever that is for you, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Uh, I find myself sometimes we go on hikes, a lot, and sometimes I have to remind myself, the terrain may be changing, pretty rapidly sometimes, and I have to
Yeah.
remind myself, okay, I got to be here now,
I gotta pay attention or I'm gonna find myself on my face, right?
Or I might like fall down that crevice, so,
Right.
um, so yeah, it's definitely very helpful.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
So we're gonna wrap it up here. We've been going at this for a little bit. I really appreciate your time.
yeah.
If
You're welcome.
if there's someone who is like wanting to, really take their creative practice off of the back burner and
Hmm.
make it a central part of their life again,
Hmm.
um, what um, what would you suggest that they do? Like, what is one thing that you might do if you were that person to jumpstart um, the process?
I would think about what is it that what brings you joy, like what would be the thing you want to see, um and I guess I don't know, just do it. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Get
yeah,
the thing that you need, you know what I mean, or use what you have, you know what I mean. You don't have to have like expensive equipment or paints or anything like that.
right.
A lot of times the best thing to do is to just jump. That's
Yeah.
all I can say. I think
No, I love it. I
and no
love it.
one's, the thing is, like, no one else is going to, no one's going to judge you. And like, if you think, you might have that voice in your head or something like that, but just do it if it makes you happy, and it's not harming anybody else,
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, learn from it and let it go, right? So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
take what you
That's-
can from it and move.
You're not going to be sorry.
No, no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I was just, yeah, whatever you do, it's like, especially if it's your first time, you're not going to be great at it.
Right.
Give yourself some time. And if you have to walk away from it, come back and do it again. You know what I mean?
For sure. That's really good. Just do it. Just jump into it and
Yeah.
take some take some risks, be vulnerable, put
Yeah.
yourself out
Vulnerability. That's the thing. Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
vulnerability.
That's very important. And that can be hard to access sometimes, but yeah, definitely.
Sure. So thank you so much. So everybody, this is Tim McFarlane. So you can see his work at timmcfarlane.com. And he is represented by Bridget Mayer Gallery in Philadelphia and Paris, Texas, LA, and Los Angeles, California. He is right here in Philadelphia. And it was such an awesome pleasure and privilege to hang out with you tonight. Thanks for hanging in there
Yeah.
with technical glitches for a
No,
little
don't
bit.
worry about it, man. It happens,
Um,
I'm on Instagram too. So,
Yeah, and Tim's on Instagram. What is your Instagram handle? Is it just your
um,
name?
yeah, Tim McFarlane Art.
Tim McFarlane Art.
Just
Yeah,
add
so
Art to my last name. That's it.
awesome. So yeah, give him a follow over there. And then everybody at boldcreativescollective.com, I have a freebie for you guys if you go over there. It is just a little guide, 4 steps to grow your creative life. You can download that or get it actually delivered to you in your email, boldcreativescollective.com. And then also join the Facebook group, Bold Creatives Collective. If you're not there, if you're watching this, you're in there already. So I don't know why I'm saying that. But anyway, it is time to go. I really appreciate Tim. Thanks so much for hanging out, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate
See you
it.
soon.
All
Bye.
right.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
See you.